Whether it's filling your social media feeds or not, the Black Lives Matter movement is still raging, and it still needs your help.
Please consider donating to any Black Lives Matter causes you can, because we still have a long way to go towards a better future for all of us.
Donation links are provided below our description. Please check them out and consider donating. We hope you will. Thank you. And now, this week's episode. Hey gang, this episode contains spoilers, so if you don't want to be spoiled, like all the items in my refrigerator, watch the movies first.
Twinema.
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 Cinema.
Twinema.
Cinema.
Hello, and welcome to Twinema Cinema. I'm Richard Milhouse Nixon, and here, as always, is my twin brother, Joey.
You know what, Richard? I had no idea that your middle name was Milhouse.
My mother was a huge fan of The Simpsons.
What, I feel like doesn't that flip? Isn't it the other way around? Maybe she was a huge fan of you?
What about Richard M. Nixon has ever made sense?
Just one of the most fun characters on the history of Futurama is realistic fictional future president and former president Richard Nixon.
No, of course, it is me, Max, the other co-host, just using a little presidential persona for the beginning of the episode, as we're actually going to be spending a couple episodes trying to portray some presidential positivity leading up to the election on November 3rd.
Indeed. So we figured it would only be right for us to do some dueling films that take place in, I think, DC, but if not in DC, around the world of DC. Both of our films this week are from, what year is it, Max?
The good year of 2004.
I wonder if people can figure out right now what two movies we're going to be talking about this week, just from those clues.
Well, considering they pressed play on the podcast, I'm guessing they already know just by looking at the title, but for the sake of tension, we're going to keep this bit going.
God, I completely forgot it's in every title.
So, okay, what movies came out in 2004? Well, that was a really big summer for me, because that was the summer of Spider-Man 2.
Ooh, that's an excellent choice. That was 2004? Nice.
And Collateral.
Really? I guess, like, for me, I feel like those two movies came to me in different parts of my life. They're like a completely separate. So the fact that they're the same year is just strange.
I'll always remember Collateral because it was the first movie I legally was able to see that was rated R. I say legally because, of course, I watched rated R movies before that. I was a teenager. It was also the summer of Chronicles of Riddick and White Girls.
Man, you know what's strange about that statement is that White Girls is the better of those two movies.
I don't know if I want to go that far, but
I'm sorry. Chronicles of Riddick is terrible. It's a terrible movie.
As long as you don't diss Pitch Black, we're good.
Yeah, Pitch Black, excellent. Leaps and bounds.
One of those first recognizable roles for Terry Crews, too.
Yeah, look at how far he's come since then. He played a president since that movie.
That's right. Oh, man, I'm sure we'll end up talking about Idiocracy at some point in the next month or so as well. But if you haven't already guessed from our leading on, or from just, reading the name of this particular episode, we're talking about Chasing Liberty and First Daughter.
And one of those, as you can tell, definitely took a bigger swing creatively when naming it.
And I'm guessing that has something to do with the plots of the movies as well. With one daughter, a little more free-spirited, the other one a little more by the book. Yeah, this is kind of a rarity for this podcast as well, as neither Joseph or myself have actually seen any of these movies.
It's a rarity indeed, and actually the first for our podcast. Hopefully not the last, but the first. Just like the First Daughter.
And just like the Chasing Liberty.
So, I mean, since neither of us have seen these movies, we just kind of got to wing it on what they're about. But, you look at the covers, you look at the cast, and you kind of put together, based off of the trailers, they're probably pretty romantic comedy-esque. I think that's what they were shown to be for me, from what I remember from the time, but I don't actually know that for certain. But I'm assuming, as of right now, we're about to watch two romantic comedies.
It's very hard to tell because the only exposure I've had to these films is the posters. Now, Chasing Liberty actually has a picture of Mandy Moore in front of the White House. So it can be inferred it takes place at the White House. Whereas the poster for First Daughter simply has Katie Holmes in front of a white background. This explains nothing whatsoever.
She just lives in a void. She's the first daughter to live in a void.
Yep, the White House is so white now, it's just a background.
So I'm looking forward to actually finding out what these movies are about because, as you mentioned, we've seen the posters. I've seen them online when I'm scrolling through my series and TV shows and movies to watch. It's like, oh, this one pops up every once in a while. I know that I've seen advertisements for both of these movies before other movies that I've watched before, but I just never had any particular interest in seeing either of these ones.
I literally have no interest in watching romantic comedies on the best of days. So yeah, these kind of passed me by for better fare in 2004.
And for me, I think it was a little bit too early for me going to see them with girlfriends. I know that once 2005 came around, I saw a lot more movies that I wouldn't have normally seen just because it was something to do with her.
So yeah, all we really have to do is just speculate on the plots of these movies. And that's kind of what we excel at. What can you remember?
So Max, which one of these movies are you going to take under your wing and try and figure out what's going on?
Well, I am going to try to speculate the plot of First Daughter, as it is the most vague of all of these entries. All it has is that picture of Katie Holmes as the president's daughter on the poster, but just trying to guess at what's going on, I would say she is a very by-the-book and frumpy character. Maybe frumpy is not the right word, but she does not know how to have fun. But of course, on an outing, taking her away from the confines of the fairly safe and, benign White House, she actually meets her Aladdin-type character, showing, hey, this guy knows how to live. And she actually starts having fun. And eventually, she runs away from the White House, possibly to, eventually get eloped with this new character she meets. They have all kinds of adventures. Meanwhile, the president, who is apparently played by Mark Harmon, sends the Secret Service after her, so they have to run after her. And she takes the guy with her, as she has not told him who she is. So she's trying to evade Secret Service, and trying to fall in love at the same time. It's basically the plot of Roman Holiday.
That's what I was going to say, Max. It's one of my favorite movies, especially favorite rom-coms, and definitely one of the best of all time. Highly recommend if you have not yet seen it. It is excellent. But I think Max kind of nailed that one. I really feel like that sounds like what that movie is to me. So now I'm going to have to really step it up here with my description of what I think Chasing Liberty is going to be. So I think we got to roll with what Max said earlier. I like the idea that she's more of a free spirit and she's out. I'm going to go ahead and say maybe I'm going to go with a big swing here and say she's actually out here in California at Berkeley is where she's going to school because it seems appropriate. And she's being chased by one of two things. I'm leaning towards a reporter trying to get a scoop on the first daughter. That's what I'm thinking. But it could also conceivably be another politician a politician to be who's just trying to get some inside information. But I like reporter because I feel like that just seems very appropriate. And also another solid throwback to Roman Holiday, as that's what's going on in that movie. So I feel like that's the case. Now, as far as where it goes from there, I don't know. Maybe it's right. He runs into her right at like summer break. And so she's about to go off and do her own thing, and he chases her across the country to maybe some kind of music festival type event. And then from there, that's when she slowly starts to realize that this guy is interested in her for more reasons than he's been letting on. And so somewhere in there, they break up in some capacity. I don't know. Man, Max, I don't know the ending to this movie.
All we know is he's literally chasing Liberty, and I assume her father is also chasing Liberty. Chasing the first daughter, Liberty.
See, I like that. I guess that makes sense. And maybe at summer break, the Secret Service loses her or something because she ditches him. And so now everybody's chasing Liberty because the first daughter, is missing all of a sudden. But she's just trying to get away. She just doesn't want to be a part of this political life, man.
It's true. I only know one other thing about this movie, and that's who plays the president, her father, and it's a Batman.
A Batman?
A Batman.
If it's a Batman, it's got to be Michael Keaton then, right?
You'd be correct.
Okay, because I was like, if it's Val Kilmer, I feel like I'd know that. And if it's George Clooney, I feel like I'd know that. And if some reason it was Christian Bale, that would really just completely confuse me. So, Michael Keaton. All right, well, I love Michael Keaton. This is another reason why I kind of want to check this movie out all of a sudden.
Which is crazy because Mark Harmon, the other president, has actually voiced Superman in a couple animated movies.
Nice. So we got a whole bunch of DC folks in these. Oh, shit! Katie Holmes is in Batman.
And then Mandy Moore is in movies. She's done movies.
Hey, she's in Saved, so like literally it doesn't matter what else she does for movies for me. Saved is amazing.
All I know is the one thing she hasn't done was the choreography for La La Land, as apparently that's a different Mandy Moore. And I learned.
It would have been better if it wasn't, though. But, you know, what can you do?
All right. Well, I'm very curious to see how close we actually get with our guesses, because we got very specific on this, but I suppose we had to, because we haven't seen them.
Yeah, we had to take a big swing, you know, because why not?
We will see you in 4.5 presidential daughter hours.
Thank you so much for listening. I don't know why I'm talking still. Max, you ended that perfectly. I'm just kind of stuck in a loop right now. Is there anything else we need to say?
No, I think we got it.
All right. We're going to cut.
For this week's movies, First Daughter and Chasing Liberty, you can find them wherever you rent good digital movies these days.
And that's the only place we could find them. They could only be for rent because we can't find them streaming anywhere. What a conundrum with our modern society.
Have fun, guys. See you in 4.5 hours.
I love coffee. Do you love coffee? I love coffee too. You know what else coffee can do? It can help us keep this podcast going. So if you go to coffee.com/TwinemaCinema, ko-fi.com/TwinemaCinema, you can give us coffee or money coffee or coffee money. Oh man, we should pay with beans. Anyway, coffee.com/TwinemaCinema. Help us out. Thanks. Bye.
You want to get out of here?
More than you know.
Thought I'd make this night a little more memorable.
He's reaching. Go!
It was only a camera.
You had that restaurant swarming with all of your secret servants. You ruined my date. And now I'm gonna die before I ever get to third base. I mean, second.
Imagine what it's like to have your whole life picked out for you.
You know where there are two huge individuals with stun guns and no manners flanking our door? I'm just trying to have a normal college experience.
All I want is normal, Mia. I just want to be like everybody else.
You're not like everybody else.
Never ask a president to promise, honey.
I'm not. I'm asking my dad. I'm Sam.
James.
I'm Hannah. Who are you?
Ben Calder, freelance getaway man.
She's on the move.
No.
Liberty's gone AWOL. Secure the perimeter. What could I give you, Sam? The president's daughter. I don't have anything to offer you.
What if I was just like everybody else, James? How would you feel about me then?
You have a little thing for me, huh?
I do not have a thing for you.
I thought I finally found someone who'd like me for me.
Well, how do you know his feelings for you weren't real?
You lied to me?
Up until the last 3 days, I was perfectly content with my life, and then you came along.
I felt like I knew myself for the first time.
Did you love him?
I loved who I got to be with him.
That's worth that. So third base is what again?
I always thought it was over. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. God, I am the worst with accents, Max. But anyhow, everybody, welcome back to Twinema Cinema.
Joey, I just got to say, I'm real proud of what you did just there.
There's no way that anyone's proud of that attempted JFK. I bet they don't even know that it was supposed to be JFK.
Any more than they knew I was trying to do Clinton right there, so.
Max, what does your JFK sound like?
I try to talk like this when I'm doing JFK, because there's nothing to fear but podcast himself.
Well, let's get away from our impersonations, although obviously... Well, I actually would like to hear from our listeners who does a better JFK. I know it's Max, but I want to hear it from other people so that I can be shamed into getting better at this.
Well, actually, I actually do have one listener in the closet back here. Let's see if we can. Let him do another impression. Yeah, you heard him.
No. What? No, I'm already too embarrassed. It's too hot in this room already for me to be sweating over this. So anyhow, the two films that we watched this week are First Daughter and Chasing Liberty.
They were indeed, and they weren't half bad. I won't exactly go as far as to say they're half good, but yeah, there was some good stuff in both of them.
I don't think they're the worst movies we've watched on this podcast. They're definitely like they're definitely okay. I'm not going to call them particularly great. There are some really good moments in each of them, and I think the cast does a good job with what they have. But these rom-coms really aren't elevating themselves to like the next level. I wouldn't say that they are particularly great that I'd recommend people going out to see them when there are so many other rom-coms available.
And if I had to, describe them in both political and entertainment terms, I would say these movies could have been a little more progressive, but instead they chose to be a little more conservative, not really changing much of the formula.
Yeah, they are very much centrist in their scope, that's for sure. So neither Max or I had seen either of these films, which was a first for the podcast. So when we were making our guesses in the first part of this episode, we were just shooting out there. We were just shooting blind, and we had no idea what we were trying to do. But we did a surprisingly good job, although there were some hilarious little mistakes.
Like me confusing the presidents in either movie, for one.
Yeah, that was pretty good. The fact that for Chasing Liberty, I guessed that she was in California, which is the plot of First Daughter, but guessed it for the wrong movie.
Although we don't exactly know she's in California. I think she might be in Washington, but who the heck knows, because they just chose a fake town called Redmond.
No, she's in California because she says that she wanted to be like 3,000 miles away from Dad.
Well, I mean, the whole West Coast is like 3,000 miles, so it could have been anywhere.
They said California, okay?
Okay, for the sake of argument, let's say California, because they filmed at UCLA.
So regardless, it was in California.
Fine.
It was at UCLA?
Yeah, they filmed a lot of it at UCLA.
Okay, nice.
I mean, this is like one of those LA filmed movies. They didn't go much elsewhere.
Yeah, and also when you watch some of the White House sequences, you're just like, CGI White House, eh? I don't like it. No. Which
I don't know why.
they did in both movies. So it's definitely a thing that was happening in 2004, right? That's when these movies came out?
Yeah, although one movie did it a little better than the other one.
Which would you say? Chasing Liberty of the two, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Well, one, how do you mess up a straight shot? And they did a cool camera move with a pull-out and Chasing Liberty, and
I would say I agree. The Chasing Liberty, I also don't know for sure, and I can't wait to get into it later, but just based on what happens in Chasing Liberty, I feel like the budget had to have been like twice as much as First Daughter, but I have no actual idea.
I might have an actual idea, but I'll keep it to myself for a little bit.
Okay, cool. We'll get into it a little bit later. So what do we want to talk about first here, Max? Usually we start with the similarities. Keep the tradition alive?
Well, I guess, yeah, as far as the structure of this podcast is concerned, let's keep doing the same thing we've been doing for a while. I like it. I like where your mind's at.
So I think the first thing, which kind of goes back actually to our Heavyweights in Camp Nowhere episode, is the fact that both of our main characters are the same age. And that's a big plot point for each of these movies. And they're both, well, actually, I guess I don't know for sure in Chasing Liberty when the movie takes place. We just know that she's 18 and then goes to college. So I'm thinking it's probably the summer right after high school. And then First Daughter is like the fall of her freshman year of college.
Yeah, and it's leading into an election year for First Daughter as well. So yeah, it's absolutely the fall of an election year.
Exactly. It is pretty much all taking place before the November election, although there's like a little bit at the end where it's post-election.
And yeah, Chasing Liberty is basically over summer, but yeah, for the sake of argument, I know Mandy Moore specifically says, I'm 18. I don't know if Kitty Holmes actually says it, but I think they're both 18.
Yeah, I mean, you're technically correct. She doesn't need to be 18 to be in college, but based on everything regarding the movie, I guess she's got to be 18.
And then we also got similar inspirations for the movies, which makes sense. They're both kind of based on Chelsea Clinton, as she was also of college age when the Clintons were in the White House. And yeah, like they actually name-checked Chelsea in First Daughter, I believe.
Yeah, I think they actually might have name-checked her in Chasing Liberty too, but I don't remember for sure. But I know what because they referenced Chelsea going to Stanford, specifically in First Daughter, which I found to be very interesting. For me, I don't really remember any of this time frame. They in First Daughter specifically, they talk about how they're talking about her fashion sense and they're ripping her apart for dressing a certain way and other things like that. And it's weird because I think that's so wrong to do to somebody, and I just don't know. Is that actually what happened in the 90s? Did they rip apart this young woman for dressing incorrectly simply because of who her parents are?
I mean, I have no frame of reference either because we were the same age as, we're twins. So, yeah, I don't remember anything at all, but that sounds like pretty par for the course as far as entertainment news is concerned.
Yeah, which is just super unfortunate because I don't remember, like, I could be wrong here on this front, but I don't remember anyone ever saying anything about Barack Obama's children in terms of like their clothing. So hopefully that means that we evolved a little bit as a culture, at least temporarily, before we jumped off a goddamn cliff.
But I mean, the Obama kids were also younger as well,
True.
It's a different thing. But yeah, you're right. Said cliff jumping.
But yes, so the inspiration is definitely there, and it's more pronounced in First Daughter specifically because she is at college for most of the movie. Although in Chasing Liberty, she also is in college very briefly towards the end.
And then going along with the entertainment news angle, both First Daughters have to manage crowds. They both have photo ops thrust upon them fairly early in the movie.
People just want to take their photograph with the First Daughter, it seems. And also in First Daughter, they kind of lean more heavily into this because for most of the movie, we actually see her as the First Daughter, not pretending to be somebody else. So because of that, there's a little bit more attention drawn to her and her role as a daughter of a president.
Yeah, I guess they do play with that a little bit at the very beginning of Chasing Liberty. But I mean, they do pull out from the White House, so you get a clue pretty quickly on that one.
Well, yeah, they never try to hide what's going on, but I think more of Chasing Liberty is focused on her out there doing her own thing, whereas First Daughter is more her trying to get out there to do her own thing.
Yeah, she doesn't actually, get out there too often because she is constantly hounded by her security detail, which both of the daughters actually have to go through. Both daughters, have, I don't want to say obscene amount of personnel trailing them, but it's a lot.
In each of the movies, we see the security officers, agents, the Secret Service agents play, varying degrees of roles. And I think you're going to see it a little bit more in Chasing Liberty, where we have a little bit more character expansion. I think was one of the things that you mentioned. And we actually see a little more depth to those. But the fact that they are hounded by at least two security officers, Secret Service agents at all times is one similarity for sure. In both movies, we start out with a larger group, and then the daughters demand to have a smaller detail, and they each get that smaller detail, basically knocking it down to two.
Do they?
They do.
It's kind of the plot point in the movie that they do not, in fact, get a smaller detail. They just get told it's a smaller detail, and it becomes a problem again later on.
Of course, both parents are lying to their kids.
Because they're politicians.
Well, I think most parents probably would lie to their kids in a similar way in this situation, but being a politician doesn't help, that's for sure, especially when they lean into it in both movies that politicians lie. It's like there's these very small little jabs at politics because they're not overtly going after anything, but both of them are just like, pick, just coming at them a little bit.
Yeah, in either case, they don't actually say if the candidate or the presidents themselves are Republican or Democrat. They specifically try to avoid that. So yeah, they aren't addressing any particular things with that.
And in both movies, they cut into speeches that the presidents are giving, but they cut in like at the last minute. So you only basically hear the, thank you and God bless America moments. They don't really give you any idea what their political leanings are, which I think is the right move for this type of a movie. But I think it would have been more fun in some ways if they leaned in on one and had the daughter go like the exact opposite way. And so we have like conservative, progressive infighting in that way. But maybe that's the movie that we make later about first daughters.
Yeah. And with that too, I guess you got some friends in the movies trying to help out said first daughters. And they do that by simply changing their clothes and hiding their face.
I mean, it works for Superman, man. It can work for just about anybody.
Just got to put Superman in a frumpy sweater and a hat. No idea.
It's true. I mean, Lois has no idea. But speaking of the clothes, as Max pointed out, and it's hard to not notice, we have early 2000s fashion all over the place here.
We got midriffs everywhere with the first daughters. Thankfully, not a lot of denim. I had a fear of that popping up or cropping up if we're talking about midriffs. But yeah, it's like, I remember when this was made.
Man, it's so funny because it's just like we're watching some of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies too right now. Do we want to tease this, Max? Okay, just making sure before we go on. That aside, we're just going to leave it in. Anywho, we're watching some of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies right now because we're trying to do another field trip coming up. And you can't help but realize how cyclical fashion is. I mean, in the early to mid 80s, so 20 years prior to this, midriffs are a huge thing. But oddly enough, it's going for a lot more for the guys.
Yeah, I mean, especially with sports jerseys.
Yeah, which I love.
Yeah, Johnny
that.
Depp was rocking that.
I think I need to buy some sports jerseys and just start cutting them myself. I like it. But if you're going to cut a jersey, do you cut an opposing team's jersey? But then you're still wearing an opposing team's jersey. I don't know how to feel about it.
I would just say avoid the whole thing altogether. Although, you know what they can't avoid in these movies, though? Hail to the Chief. It's a song that pops up no matter what, to the annoyance, especially of Katie Holmes in First Daughter. They pretty much get away with not even listening to it once in Chasing Liberty, but I noticed they were actually doing an instrumental version of it in the credits. So it's in there.
Yeah, it sneaks in there. And I do love that joke in First Daughter because I can't imagine how often you would have to hear that song. As an adult, when you already have 40, 50, I don't know how old these characters are. It seems like they're probably mid-50s. So we're going to call it like 50 years of musical experience under your belt. Hearing Hail to the Chief every day is probably not the worst thing ever. But as a kid growing up for 8 years, like that, you hear that all the time, like it's going to screw with your head.
Just a little bit. Although they're kind of already screwed up just a little bit because these characters are lonely. Both of them are lonely, especially in crowds, as Mandy Moore definitely pointed out.
Which I want to go real quick and say this was something we screwed up in the first half of this episode as well. We assumed, because it was called Chasing Liberty, that her name was Liberty. But in fact, that's just her code name, and her name, I believe, was Anna.
Yeah, I know. It kind of adds a little more to the thought behind the title of that movie rather than just First Daughter.
Yeah, it makes it a little better, kind of like Olympus Has Fallen versus White House Down.
Exactly.
One of them's a little more on the nose than the other, for sure.
But also, it's a little bit of subtext there too, because they're trying to be free. They're trying to be their own people. They're in fact chasing their own liberty.
Right? Man, somebody put a little bit more effort into that one, but at the same time, First Daughter is straight to the point, and sometimes that really works for me.
Although I honestly think it might have been an accident, because I think the working title for Chasing Liberty was First Daughter.
So we got a little no strings attached kind of action going on here. They're like, oh no, somebody already named it the same thing.
It's like, well, what are we gonna do? We're assuming all these people are dumb. I don't know why.
Well, it's a fun little voice that we just went into, especially because it worked for me. I didn't do a terrible job. But with both of these movies, I noticed something that I thought was pretty interesting. Both of our presidents in these movies, which, I mean, just makes sense, they are previously governors who then become presidents. And both of our first daughters reference this, that they've basically been in politics their entire lives because of that. And so that also just adds to the similarities and then also the loneliness that each of these characters are experiencing.
Although, honestly, the biggest similarity in both of these movies is the Secret Service guy. Both of them have beaus who are in the Secret Service who are hiding their profession from the first daughters.
And this is also one of the biggest differences between the two movies. In First Daughter, we don't know until halfway through the movie that he's a Secret Service agent. They do a pretty dang good job of hiding that. When you look at it in hindsight, there's a couple of signs that seem pretty obvious, but in the moment when that reveal happened, I was so caught off guard, I actually had to pause the movie and step out of the room. I was that into it.
And it's funny you said that because I did almost the exact same thing. Like, oh man, it was a surprise. I thought that he was going to be like a member of the opposing party or something like that and just trying to get dirt on her to embarrass the family or something like that because there was that rally earlier in the movie.
Yeah, it really felt like he was maybe he's also the president's son, you know? Not the actual president, but like the guy who's running for president from the opposition party. That's what it felt like. It felt very much like they understood each other because he's vaguely mentioning that he understands that kind of lifestyle, those similarities, when he actually was saying that his dad was a Secret Service agent, which is another striking similarity actually. In Chasing Liberty, his dad is like a CIA agent. So it's a hereditary line of these agents coming out here, and that's why they're so young. These young bucks.
And then you got Chasing Liberty, where we pretty much know from the Act 1 break that Matthew Good's character is a Secret Service agent, and we're let in on the secret pretty much for the rest of the movie. And it's definitely, I think, character development-wise, it works way better because we actually care more for Matthew Good than we do for, oh crap, I forgot his name. And we care more for Matthew Good's character in Chasing Liberty more than we do Mark Blucas's character James in First Daughter, just because he has more of a character arc, because he is a career Secret Service security guy.
Man, now I've got you all confused. Yes, it works a lot better in Chasing Liberty. Like, I guess it works better for the movie as a whole, I think is the way to put it. Because I think up until that moment, I really am in and do like First Daughter quite a bit. I still don't think it's quite hitting on all cylinders like it could be, but there's a lot of fun moments, and you see this back and forth, this jealousy. Why are things not progressing? And we see that actually in both movies. In First Daughter, it seems a little more innocent, and then in Chasing Liberty, we know exactly why he's not taking things any further. It's because he shouldn't, because it's not like it's his job. And so that creates a very good tension that we're let in on. We see that at every turn, he's trying very hard to not actually fall for her, because if he does, then we got a whole new world of problems.
Yeah, it's dramatic irony. It's one of the oldest tricks in the theatrical book. It is a trick that works a lot better. The surprise in the moment in First Daughter is great, but after that, we've hit a moment that is normally reserved for like the last third of the film. Oh no, he tricked me this whole time, and it just kind of gives the film nowhere else to go.
Exactly. And so then the movie just kind of keeps going, which I guess that's life, man, you know, but it makes it a lot less interesting. You know, I think they do try to do a good job of bringing him in and seeing him driving on the road and his sadness. And then they see him going in front of a panel to try and not even win his job back, but kind of just explain his reasoning for the decisions that he made. And I mean, realistically, he's not a very good Secret Service agent. He punched a guy out in a bar, you know, who hadn't done anything wrong, I guess, either. So it's just like, I feel like maybe he should be getting fired. And then instead, because of her love for him, he ends up getting to defend and protect the president of the United States. I mean, talk about failing upward. Am I right?
Although it isn't exactly satisfying either, because he gets a dream job, but he doesn't get the girl right away. It's inferred that they're going to end up together afterwards, but it just kind of ends with her getting her thing, he gets his thing, and that's it.
See, I kind of liked that ending more because okay, they got to go with the comparison here once again, obviously, to Roman Holiday, because in Roman Holiday, ruining this spoiler alert real quick, secondary spoiler alert for a non-movie on the podcast.
It's over 50 years old. I think you're clear.
I think so too, but nonetheless, at the end of that movie, they don't end up together either. And I really thought that they were going to go that route, and they kind of like pull the punches on that, right? They kind of half-ass it. And I think that also is the problem. If they get together and stay together, okay. Cheesy, cliche, we see it coming. That's what we thought was going to happen the whole time as it is. But instead of them amicably breaking up and just having things kind of end and ending in that way, we get like this in-between situation where they kiss, which is a nice little moment, and then, like you said, we're led to believe that they'll get back together in the future, and that's kind of what we're left on. And I just don't like that. I kind of wish that they just would have followed her out to the VW and never saw anything post that kiss with him. We don't need to know that she's coming back home for spring break or whatever. That's irrelevant.
Well, you know why they did that, though, right? Because the Secret Service guy who never talks finally talks, and that's the joke. They needed that.
Yeah, but like he doesn't need to say that. He could have said "tough break, kid." He could have said anything. It didn't. The fact that he talks is a great moment, but he doesn't need to be like, yeah, everything's going to work out for you, kid. It could have been a lot. I think it could have been better if he just like even just patted him on the shoulder. Didn't say anything. Just stood next to him and was like, I'm sorry. You know, it's optimistic and hopeful, but I just don't think it's optimistic and hopeful enough. I feel like it's half-assed.
I feel like at that point, you could just turn the audience and say, well, that's the ending. You're not going to see it.
Right?
But yeah, the ending of Chasing Liberty, it's obviously the more traditional romantic comedy ending where they both, end up together. Although I feel like it's earned at this point because they've both kind of sacrificed to get there. Like he actually quits his job and starts pursuing his passion in photography or videography, whatever it might be at the opera. She takes a leap and goes to college, does the exchange thing, and finds him.
Yeah, I think in that situation, it's also just like better written, right? Because that's foreshadowed fairly early on when he references that his dad and his mom broke up because his dad chose work over the family. And so when he ends up choosing to leave his kind of job as a Secret Service agent, as a foreign agent, I'm not 100% sure his role. I feel like he was like a freelance Secret Service agent at the beginning of the movie. But he chooses to leave that life. And he chooses it not even knowing if they're going to get back together, but he chooses that because otherwise that isn't an option. Otherwise they can't be together. And so then she decides, through a little bit of help from her dad, that maybe moving to London for a semester is probably a good idea, which I love because he does that in such a dad cheesy underhanded kind of way where it's just like, we know why he's suggesting it, why he's said you should go study at Oxford. We all know, but she doesn't quite get it yet. She eventually catches on.
I feel like that kind of leads into another major difference in the movies, and that's the parents, the parental stylings of the different parents. The parental stylings of either Mark Harmon or Michael Keaton in this case. And I think that Chasing Liberty kind of scores more points here because they feel more like real parents to me rather than politicians. And that certainly is because they're not in an election year. That it actually makes the whole difference because that's kind of how you frame the First Lady and the President in First Daughter as the political animals at that point. But yeah, Mark Harmon shows off a little more warmth than Michael Keaton does. And yeah, I think the election is almost entirely to blame, the faults of First Daughter, because it's so much more simple. In Chasing Liberty, they have time to just be parents because they just have to do normal day-to-day functions. And he wants his daughter to find love, so he subtly does that little trick in telling her to go to Oxford.
And I really like that moment because really one of the things that I like more about First Daughter, and I think it has a lot to do with just Michael Keaton being so damn charming is I really like Michael Keaton in First Daughter, but he is also a terrible dad in First Daughter. I mean, both of the parents are not ideal. Both families are really messing with their daughters' lives. They do the exact same thing. They send in a Secret Service agent to specifically in First Daughter, it's to be her love interest, right? In Chasing Liberty, it's also that, but not quite as much because at that point,
though, it's motivated because the president is being a dad and he's trying to, get his daughter to have some fun, but also do it in a safe, protected manner. So he feels like he's winning points.
Right? It feels like he's doing it, I guess, in a better way, I guess. It's not, but it's framed a little bit better. And I think it's framed a little better partially because we know earlier on. So that when that reveal happens later in First Daughter, it's like all trust is broken, where in Chasing Liberty, we already knew that trust was broken. But at the same time, when we're first introduced to James in First Daughter, he's just a random guy on campus. Like, he doesn't feel like an agent in any kind of way. He really does seem like a regular person. And then when he ends up being the RA for her, that's forced, So it's like, she already liked him before that, and then they specifically chose to lean in and make this happen.
Although they explained it pretty well, though. Oh, the other RA didn't want the attention, so he moved away. That felt natural to me. It didn't feel as forced.
I agree. I think it flows well for the story, but then it also hurts Michael Keaton as a president because it makes him look like much more of a dick, because it's just like he did this very purposefully. In Chasing Liberty, he's just a random guy she met that day when they make this decision. It's not somebody that she actually likes, that she's expressed that she likes to her parents, it's just this dude. So it seems a lot more natural in that regard. And it shines a better light on Mark Harmon as the president. Although once again, we're still really sticking our noses in places we shouldn't belong, which, America.
Yeah. Although, it is refreshing in Chasing Liberty because it's not necessarily love that gets them in trouble. It's just the need to be free. Chasing that liberty, the love stuff comes later, whereas it's definitely love and dating and stuff for First Daughter. I mean, she kidnaps her best friend roommate and James, Secret Service man, to go to Washington on a whim, not telling them anything.
Yeah, which is, it's a fun moment, but a terrible use of taxpayer dollars.
Also, they fly on Air Force One to go to Washington, and I don't think it's technically called Air Force One unless the president is aboard.
I believe you are correct. And if we're wrong, we can blame the movie Air Force One because that's literally why I know that.
It's like, well, we'll have to watch that one in a future episode anyway.
I know. I'm so excited.
They also take a chance to try to make the mother a strong figure in the family for one reason or another as the first lady. Although First Daughter, dang, is she portrayed as a cold, calculating character. And it's unfortunate because she's kind of a fun character in Independence Day, which is what I know her from, Margaret Collin. But she basically shows up in the latter half of the movie and just says, you're going to do this, and you're going to help us win this election, and then you can do what you want. Whereas she's much more warm and intelligent in Chasing Liberty, beating both of their asses at Scrabble, the president and First Daughter. So she's established as smart and an influence on the president.
They definitely take a different approach in both of the movies to the first ladies, where they really separate themselves, like you said, I think is just their role in the relationship, both as parent and as wife, as partner. And in First Daughter, she's definitely more of a partner to the president and is a huge part of his campaign and is a huge part of like the strategy behind everything they're doing, which also makes her come off even colder. Like you mentioned, that moment really does, but she's seems to be a willing participant in everything, where in Chasing Liberty, she definitely is really second guessing the president on this decision to screw with their daughter's life. She doesn't have any say in it technically, so she doesn't pick this battle in that moment, but she comes out very specifically against the plan, and I appreciate that.
And then we got, the people protecting the first daughters, whether she knows it or not. Not talking about the Secret Service security personnel detail, man.
Yeah, the other Secret Service agents who she knows are actually the ones. Man, that's a confusing thing to try and say. The Secret Service agents that she knows are Secret Service agents in both movies.
And they try to establish them as friendly, like she has, witty banter with both of them in both movies. Although they're actually characters for the most part in Chasing Liberty, because you actually have a romantic subplot going on with her main two folks played by Jeremy Piven and Annabella Sciorra. Although it is a little grating at first because Jeremy Piven is just like doing sexual harassment light.
It's not even light, really. Like it's pretty bad. It's definitely like this moment where you're like, this is a huge Me Too thing that she needs to say something about this, which she does, which I'm glad that she does, and she does call him out on it. But the thing that's problematic about that storyline is that then they end up getting together. Now, they get together basically because he shows a change of heart and seems to recognize his faults, which is good. That's what you should do when you're called out on your stupid bullshit like that. But I don't like it. I don't like that they get together. They could have gotten together just as easily without him being a bastard in the beginning. We don't need that, but they decided to make that his character arc is he's this overtly sexually harassing guy, fairly misogynistic in some of the things he says, and then turn him into a good guy, but over the course of like a day? Like I don't feel like it's gonna take. I don't think it became reality, but they're at least more interesting than the other guys who basically don't say or do anything.
Like literally one of them says nothing, and that's the joke.
Which is kind of funny, but then have the other guy be like actually interesting and fun, because he's also boring. He might as well not say anything at all.
Although kind of venturing over to the good parts of First Daughter is, I'm pretty sure we're both leaning towards the same thing at this point. But one thing that First Daughter definitely has that they didn't lean on as hard in Chasing Liberty is a best friend, the roommate. For First Daughter is a character, and she kind of falls into that trap of being jealous of the first daughter, but they kind of go through that pretty quickly as the movie goes on, and they become genuine friends afterwards, and that is something that Chasing Liberty does not have. She has kind of her friend in Prague that is the rebel of that relationship and kind of sneaks her out, but beyond that, she's by herself with Ben, the Secret Service personnel security agent guy.
Yes. I love that we just keep screwing that up and extrapolating.
Oh, I'm doing it on purpose.
Now you're making me feel bad. But anyhow, I agree. I think that is a strength of First Daughter for sure, is that they give her some actual grounding in reality. They give her some friends and some people to interact with, specifically her roommate, who then becomes her best friend. And they both learn something together from each other. And I think that that's really important. And it's obviously more of an importance in the story that First Daughter's telling, is that she needs it more, I think is what it is. She needs more of a grounding in reality because she is so political. She's doing everything specifically to help her dad get elected, to try and run the campaign. She's learning all of that. She goes to all of these parties with all of these older people, and she just doesn't know how to relate to people her own age or even relate to herself. And in Chasing Liberty, that's not really her character arc. She seems like she already really knows who she is. She doesn't need to try and find herself. She just wants the freedom to go out there and be herself. In First Daughter, she still doesn't really know who she is yet. And so it's very much her trying to figure that out. So she needs these other characters to meet along the way. And I think that's also a big difference that also kind of leans towards Chasing Liberty working a little better, is that she's this more or less fully fleshed out character to begin with.
Yeah, she's already dating.
Yeah, and so we follow her journey, and I like that. I think that's pretty fun. And then, in First Daughter, we're trying to figure out who she is, and so because of that, it makes it harder for us to get invested in her right away, because we don't even know what kind of a person she's gonna be.
Yeah, that kind of lines up nicely with our predictions, as we did predict that Katie Holmes would be the more stuffy one, and Mandy Moore would be the more loose one. Not necessarily saying loose is bad, but she does try to get naked an awful lot in this movie.
I think free-spirited is the term that I'm going to go with, Max, on this one. But yes, you're right. She definitely, they make a couple of jokes about her taking her clothes off pretty quickly, and that cracked me up. Why do you keep taking off your clothes in front of me? And it's because you're handsome. They picked two pretty darn handsome dudes, and I was trying to have an argument with myself. I'm like, all right, which of these guys is more handsome? Which one do I find more attractive? And I am not sure. I kind of lean a little bit towards First Daughter, but his accent really kind of puts him over the top for Chasing Liberty. So
I'm a fan of accents. I kind of went with Matthew Good as well, but mostly because in First Daughter, Mark Blucas looks like a combo of Jamie Kennedy and Ryan Phillippe, and I couldn't get it out of my head.
Well, I guess when you combine those two, it doesn't necessarily work out. But I will say, though, for sure, he's got a better body in First Daughter. He's got that going. Sorry. Yeah, because I actually thought at one point that he was going to be one of the athletes, right, at the school, and that's why he didn't make it to like the homecoming party thing, is because he was at practice or whatever. They threw me off a bunch of times in that movie, those sons of bitches. And then also, I don't think we even mentioned this, and I think this is a pretty, it's big and it's not big, because First Daughter starts out and is told like a fairy tale. They try and tell this fairy tale story that it's like a American princess, basically. And they use some pretty cool fantasy elements in the beginning, and I think that's kind of fun. But the problem with doing that is that it dies for the entire middle.
Yeah, you have to keep it going.
It disappears completely. And I thought we were going to get maybe like something like an Enchanted-esque kind of movie at the beginning. I was like, okay, this is going to be a huge difference. We're going to have these fantasy elements in play throughout the entire movie, and that'll be fun.
Even have some voiceover from the director, Forrest Whitaker, which, side note, Forrest Whitaker directed this movie.
Which I thought was insane. I was like, of all the types of movies he could direct, he directed this one. But then I looked up his IMDb directing credits, and I saw that he also directed Hope Floats, which completely caught me off guard. I was like, okay, well, I guess rom-coms are just right in Forrest's wheelhouse, man. It's just line them up, knock them down.
Mm-hmm. Although this was the last movie he directed. He hasn't done anything since. Whereas Andy Cadiff, the guy who directed Chasing Liberty, primarily a TV director. In fact, one of the big things I saw he directed 91 episodes of Home Improvement in the 90s.
91 episodes? God. How many episodes were there in the whole series?
Probably 100-something. Although I'm looking at my notes, I'm sorry, it was 81. 81 episodes.
Well, still, that's an insane number. And also, I love Home Improvement. Home Improvement, major part of my childhood. Loved it so much. Tool time, baby. But anyhow, getting out of that, I think it's time for us to discuss some
history, facts, and box office. Right you are, Joseph. And, well, I'll be honest, these movies, not highly regarded, I'll be honest.
I mean, there's no sugarcoating the numbers, okay? So let's start. What do you want to start with, the critics?
We'll do critics, but I mean,
okay.
I'm going to ask you, which one do you think did better box office-wise and was a little more, accepted by the critics?
Okay, box office-wise, I'm going to lean and say that it's probably Chasing Liberty, because I feel like Mandy Moore is a bigger star than Katie Holmes. So that's my reasoning.
See, I would have thought the complete opposite, because Katie Holmes was coming right off of Dawson's Creek. So you got that Joey energy. Not you, but, Joey from the Dawson.
Well, to be fair, I did not know that she was on Dawson's Creek.
Yeah, she was on Dawson's Creek for many years. Which
is so funny, because one of the songs that literally is stuck in my head at all times, I don't want to wait.
I don't know the words to this song, and I don't want to get sued.
It's always stuck in my head. And so the fact that I have no idea who's even on that show is, I guess shouldn't really come as a surprise to me. I kind of have that kind of thing all the time.
You should know everyone who was on that show, though. You got the Joshua Jackson, you got Dawson himself, James Vanderbeek, you got Michelle Williams as the not Joey on that show. So
and then Katie Holmes is Joey?
Yes.
So at the very least, I should know who Joey is. Darn it.
Well, me being the namesake. But going beyond that, I think basically I'm just saying Katie Holmes had star power at that point versus Mandy Moore, whose biggest movie would have either been being a mean girl in Princess Diaries or A Walk to Remember, which was like the sad movie to watch before The Notebook came out.
Yeah, but you can't forget that she's also a successful pop star.
Was she?
Yes.
I did not know that. Similar to you did not know about Joey. I didn't know about the pop star.
Well, there you go. Also, it looks like, just clicking on it here, A Walk to Remember came out in 2002. So, like, this might have been her next movie after A Walk to Remember.
Sounds about right, because I think Princess Diaries was 2001. But anyway, I've sidetracked this conversation entirely. As Chasing
Max,
Liberty,
which one made more money?
You were correct. There's a long way of going around to say you were right. Chasing Liberty did make more money domestically, made about $12.1 million, only about $100,000 internationally for a big grand total worldwide of $12.3 million off of a $23 million budget.
Okay.
Whereas we got First Daughter rocking only $9 million domestically, about 1.5 international for only 10.5 total. Off of, get this, a $30 million budget.
Wait, what was Chasing Liberty's budget?
23. First Daughter cost more money.
How? What did they spend the money on?
It wasn't backgrounds or graphics, I'll tell you that.
Chasing Liberty, they shoot in like 6 different foreign countries.
I'm going to say this, and it kind of goes with my first point. It's that Joey money. I think she was popular enough to demand a basically bigger salary, and I think Forrest Whitaker directing probably didn't help on that matter.
I'd also got to say that Michael Keaton's got to be factored into that budget, one would imagine, because he's a much bigger role as the president in First Daughter than the president is in Chasing Liberty. And although obviously not at the height of his powers when this movie came out, he's still Michael Keaton. Like, you still know him by name. Whereas Mark Harmon, like, you don't really know him by name until now. And that's because he's been on NCIS for like 40 years or whatever long it is at this point.
And then, kind of going along with the grosses, First Daughter, Rotten Tomatoes, 8% critically.
Oh.
43% like the audience liked that one. You got Metacritic at 31 out of 100 and 6.5 on the user scale. When you got Chasing Liberty, on the other hand, Rotten Tomatoes, 18% critically, 60% audience on that Rotten Tomatoes. Metacritic, you got 46 out of 100, and users a little less on Metacritic than First Daughter, 5.2 out of 10. So as far as Metacritic is concerned, at least on the audience part of it, First Daughter was better.
Ha! I bet you it's that Michael Keaton mojo, man. He's one charming mother.
Well, I mean, except he's the first father. And he's Batman.
I mean, that doesn't ever hurt. Okay. So, 8%. Is that our lowest score to date?
Oh, God. I mean, without having to page back through them, it sounds pretty dang low. I know some of them got down there. But you know what? I think you're right. That is the lowest score. We've never gotten to single digits.
That's crazy because, like, the movie's not, the greatest movie ever made by any stretch of the imagination. But to drop all the way down to 8% is just kind of shocking, honestly.
And it's even more shocking because First Daughter should have had the advantage because it was in the works way more. Because you know who wrote this movie? Jerry O'Connell.
Really?
Yeah, first draft of the movie written by Jerry O'Connell in the 2000s, like early 2000. In fact, they were supposed to go ahead with this movie right before he was going to film Mission to Mars.
Oh, and so Mission to Mars is the reason why we got this movie in 2004 instead of in 2000, huh?
I'm assuming so, but maybe they lost confidence in the star because this movie fell into development hell for a while, and no one knows what happened to it for a couple of years. It pops up in 2003 when it goes before the cameras in May, and you got a June 2003 start for Chasing Liberty, yet Chasing Liberty comes out first in January of 2004, January 9th to be exact. And because of that proximity, First Daughter actually pulls up stakes and doesn't even drop until September 24th of 2004.
Wait, so you're saying they started filming Chasing Liberty and then released it 6 months later?
Correct.
Dang! That is pretty impressive.
And then, June 2003 for First Daughter. And yeah, they had to wait a whole year basically on that one.
That's pretty nuts, man. I wouldn't have guessed that. Interesting. So was there any kind of dueling nature between the films? Was there any kind of animosity or like back and forth or issues with them filming simultaneously?
I mean, they filmed pretty close to each other, but there wasn't really any animosity other than the fact that Chasing Liberty came out first and it won bombing, technically, and the same plot. Pretty much the production of First Daughter had to distance itself, so it came out in the fall of that year instead and bombed even worse.
That's so crazy.
Well, it also doesn't help. January and September are usually the worst months to release movies in. If it's a popular movie, it never comes out in either of those 2 months.
Well, wouldn't September 2004 have been in the middle of an election? Isn't that exactly when the election would have been happening?
But I don't think they planned for that, though.
Well, but you'd think that maybe that would give it a bump, I guess. But it didn't work. That's for sure.
Yeah, neither of these movies made their money back, and none of them were popular enough to even make a dent in the box office.
And so with all of that out there now, these two gigantic box office bombs, which one do we think is better? It's time for us to figure out who is our
winner, who's the winner? Well, I'll be honest, Joey. I think we've been leading this whole night as, I'm going to say Chasing Liberty is the winner.
Which is funny because when I started today, before we were discussing anything, it was a toss-up for me. I was like, all right, I enjoyed both of them quite a bit. I'm not sure which one I'm going to lean to. But it really does come down to Chasing Liberty being, I think, more rewatchable, honestly. I think when you take that twist out of First Daughter, it's just not going to hold up as much of an interesting movie. And Chasing Liberty's shot in all these beautiful locations all the way across the globe. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I think their relationship also has more legs. I like it when a couple seems to work together, and so I think that's what also, just talking about it with you, I'm like, yeah, I feel like they could actually make it work.
Well, that and we actually see their legs a lot more as well, as we get pretty much a naked Mandy Moore, even though she does use a butt double for part of it, and we get Matthew Good in his underwear as well. So there are legs.
That was a bonus. I think one of the other things that put Chasing Liberty over the top for me as well is that wonderful, kind-hearted Italian family that took him in. That part really just cracked me up. I was so happy. I even put a quote from the mother in my notes, and I'm going to say it right here. You want a happy marriage? You have to kiss her every day.
And she knows her stuff because that's Professor Sprout from Harry Potter.
What? Man, I don't know anything about Harry Potter, as it turns out. That one caught me so off guard just now. But it looks like our winner this week is Chasing Liberty.
Right you are, Joey. It was just a more enjoyable movie overall, and it doesn't commit the sin of a good romantic comedy not having a memorable soundtrack. There's actually decent music selection in the movie, unlike First Daughter, which is just kind of bleh.
Yeah, there's definitely a really good pop soundtrack and kind of all over the place, too. There's even some Sean Paul in there, which I thought was really fun because it ended up being a music cue for one of the characters. And I was just like, well, that's great. This really gives you, it immediately gives you the tone of this particular gentleman.
Well, yeah, it also has one of my favorite operatic pieces of all time, Nessun Dorma, at the very end of the movie. So that's going to, make my heart tingle a little bit more as well. Mostly just because of its use in movies. Like, it's in everything.
Well, I think I'm going to go ahead and say that this is actually one of the factors is a lot of the songs for First Daughter are actually original songs co-written by Forrest Whitaker. So I think that may have something to do with why the soundtrack is a little better in Chasing Liberty is I think Forrest Whitaker was trying to make a thing happen, and I don't think it worked.
It also doesn't help that the main composer behind First Daughter, Michael Kamen, died during production.
Oh, shit.
And the remainder of the score had to be finished by Blake Neely, who a lot of people might know these days from the Arrowverse on CW. He pretty much does all the music for like Arrow and Supergirl and all that stuff. But yeah, Michael Kamen, you know him, Die Hard, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, legendary composer. Died during production. So they had to try to make up some ground there.
Well, I did not know that. May he rest in peace.
Yep, they had a dedication at the end, which I appreciated.
I saw it, but I just wasn't sure who that was. I didn't look up the name afterwards because I'm a piece of shit. Anyhow, so now that we have decided on that, how do we end our show?
Well, we end our show like we end every show, Joey. Try to take over the podcast. Wait, no. Okay, that was overreaching. But we hope you enjoyed the show. We hope you agree with us. But most of all, we want you to listen, and we want you to tell all your friends about us as well. So like us on Twitter at Twinema, Instagram, Facebook. It's Twinema Cinema. And leave us a review if you are so kind. 5 stars, if you please.
And we can be found pretty much anywhere podcasts are found at this point. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. We're on Stitcher. We're on the regular internet. You can just find us if you Google Twinema Cinema, and you can listen to our show. Please continue to do so. And thank you so much for everyone who has been listening so far. I am very pleased that we have people who continue to listen. It's kind of actually blowing me away.
I know we said we have one listener in France for some reason, but we appreciate the hell out of you.
Wherever you are, whoever you are, thank you for listening.
From the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate you.